All right, I apologize if you were enjoying that last song there. I know I was, but hey, so usually when we would do this in person, if all of you were here in the room with me, I'd go around and have a few people share some of their gratitudes. But since we are not in the room together, what I'm going to ask you to do is ask a few of you, just, hey, throw some gratitudes in the chat box of just things that you had written down that you are grateful for. So for me, man, I got to tell you, I am just so grateful for the warmth and sunshine that we are going to start experiencing that's coming. I hate the cold, so I'm so excited and grateful that we're going to get to start having some warmer days coming up. I'm also grateful that we're starting to see a reduction. Last night on the news here, they mentioned that they were wanting more people to go get tested because hardly any people are starting to show up. So I'm grateful that that's a good sign. So we're headed in a good direction. And I'm grateful for you guys being able to be on here with me and for me to share some things with you. So thank you. I see some people throwing stuff in the chat box of what their gratitudes are. Man, so important that we have that gratitude. It's the antidote to fear and gonna just help us to stay in that right space. All right, well, let's get going then. So here's what I wanted to talk about with you guys today. One of my favorite things that I love talking about, and for whatever reason, well, I guess actually I shouldn't say for whatever reason. I know the reason. The reason that I love talking about this is because it made such a huge difference in my business. So what I'm going to talk to you today is I want to go through and talk about setting appointments, but I want to talk to you about setting appointments from the standpoint of our communication. So as you are well aware, and if you're not well aware, you need to be well aware, this company is about leadership, and you are a leader. The number one skill that you have as a leader is about communication. And man, I got to tell you, for the last 5 years that I have been at Everest, which I guess isn't quite 5 years, but coming up in just 2 months from now, I will be 5 years that I've been at Everest. And I got to tell you, I did not realize prior to that in my real estate career how important the communication really, truly is and how much we need to work on it. So with that in mind, that's what I'm going to talk about today is setting appointments, but I want to do it from the standpoint of communication. Now, what I'm going to write on the board, I'll tell you just in case you can't really quite see it, but we've talked about this quite often, is the UCLA study about communication. And 7% of communication is the words that we use. 38% of our communication is the tone or the inflection, or probably a better way of saying it is just how we use those words. And then 55% of our communication is body language. It's what your body is saying. Now, I'm going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about it from a little bit different perspective than maybe what we have in the past, at least that I have spent a whole lot of time talking about. Now, here's the thing. When you look at that, 7% is the words that we use, 38% is the tone that we're going to use, and 55% of communication is our body language. Now, here's the thing though. Now, when I first saw that, so the first time I saw this study was from George, probably about 5 years ago. And when I saw this, and you look at it, you would look at it and you would think, and I have even said, and I've heard said before, the words don't really matter because it's only 7%. Now, here's the thing though, in the last couple of weeks, as I've been really thinking about this and talking about this and listening to agents make calls, which by the way, I want to actually put a little commercial out real quick. I am going to tomorrow set up a Zoom call that we can do a virtual call around. So I'm going to do that, I think 10 o'clock Utah time, 9 o'clock California time, so that I'll send out a Zoom link later today that everyone can jump on. I'll put you into breakout rooms so that you could actually sit and prospect with 3 or 4 other people in the same room, breakout room, and then you can actually raise your hand to call for one of the hosts to come and listen or answer a question, any of those things. So I want to put that out there based on what we're going to talk about today, because I would be happy to listen to some of the calls tomorrow and give you some input based on what we talk about today. So let me keep going though. So 7% is the word. So you look at that and you would think, okay, 7% is actually not that much, which would mean it probably doesn't matter too much what words you use. But here's the thought that I had. And this week, as I was thinking about it, I was thinking about how a child learns to communicate. And if you think about how a child learns to communicate, now we're not going to go through the whole thing, but if you start at the beginning, is they're just listening to the parents and they're kind of just slowly figuring out, oh, every time that my mom says mama and points at herself, that must be who she is. So that piece, great. They learn to talk. But when it comes time in school, what is the first thing that they learn in elementary school, in kindergarten, is they start to learn they learn the alphabet. So first you're learning the alphabet song. And the reason you have to learn the alphabet is because if you don't know what the sounds of the letters make and you don't know what the letters are, it's going to be really hard to actually put them into a word, to write it out into a word. Well, if you wanted to go and write a novel, so if you were going to write a book, you're going to first have to understand what the letters are. Then you got to be able to put those into words, take those words and then form them into a sentence that then can turn into a paragraph and turn into a book. Now, with that idea in mind, keep in mind that that's kind of what I would say about the words piece of this. Even though it's only 7% of our communication, the words that we use are going to make a difference. And I would say, think of it this way, is really, if you're a newer agent or you're an agent who hasn't really prospected much, meaning you're an agent who has done a ton of business off your sphere of influence and you're wanting to add another source. Because of everything that's going on, you're feeling like, I need to add a new source. Maybe you're going to start calling for sale by owners. Maybe you're going to call expired listings. What I would recommend that you do is you first got to understand the words piece of this. So the importance of a script and being able to have some type of a script. Now, people will say, well, I don't like script. I don't want to sound scripted. That's exactly what we're talking about right now, is you don't want to sound scripted. But the truth is, every single one of you has a script, even if you don't know what it is. Meaning, I have listened to enough agents make phone calls that if they are not following a written script, what you will notice, and if you will do this for yourself, you're going to notice this for yourself as well, you have a script. Now, it may have been developed by you. It may work really well, or it might not work really well. And either way is fine, but you're using a script. Just know that. You are using some type of a script. And so the first thing of this on the words is that's where the script comes into play, is we have to understand the words that we're using. Now, let me give you an example of that. So I've got two different examples that I want to share with you that hopefully will tie this together for you to be able to see. Now, when my wife and I first got married, we moved into her aunt's basement. So her aunt, so let me kind of give you a little bit more of the backstory. Her aunt, and actually, so my wife's uncle had passed away from a brain tumor. And so the aunt had finished the basement and was like, I need the extra income, so I'm going to rent out the basement. Well, it was right at the time my wife and I are getting married. So we decide we're going to go rent the basement from her aunt, which we did. And we were there for about 4 months. And really quickly, we realized we didn't really like living with the aunt. Now, that's a little ironic because of what I'm going to say next. But the aunt, it felt like she was kind of being the mom. Like we were still, it felt like we were teenagers at home. And like she would send her kids down to check on us to see how we were doing, which is a little ironic because we then moved from my wife's aunt's house to her grandma owned a duplex. And we felt like, well, now we're going to have our own separate spaces. Her grandma lived in one side of the duplex. We would live on the other side of the duplex. And the reason I say that's ironic is because after we moved in with her grandma would, when we were at work, go in because she had a key, it's her apartment, her duplex, she would go in and she would go do our laundry for us while we were at work. So it's a little ironic that we wanted to move because we felt like we were treated like kids, yet her grandma still was actually treating us that way. But here's the point. Her grandma, who has since now passed away, and she's been gone, I don't know, maybe 10 years now, not quite that long, but close. But her grandma would make fried chicken, and it was so good. Like it could rival Kentucky Fried Chicken kind of a thing, but she would make this fried chicken. Well, my wife decided, since we lived in this duplex with her grandma, she was going to have her grandma teach her how to make the fried chicken. So my wife goes to her grandma. She says, will you teach me how to do it? Guess what the first thing her grandma gives to her is? The recipe. She hands to her the words to how to make the fried chicken. So my wife takes the recipe, goes down into our part of the apartment duplex, and she cooks the chicken, and we sit down and eat it. And I was a good husband, meaning that I ate it and I was like, it's not the same as her grandma's, but in my mind, but I didn't tell her that. Of course, I'm like, oh, it's great. No, it's really good. And she's like, no, it's not. It does. She's like, well, it might be good, but it doesn't taste like grandma's, right? And I said, yeah, it doesn't. It actually does not. It's good, but it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't taste like your grandma's. So she goes to her grandma and she says, okay, grandma, help me figure this out. Like, I did everything the way that you showed me. Now you do it or at least walk me through it. So grandma's now walking her through, okay, now do this, now do this, now do this. Like, her grandma stood right there while she did it. And everything that she did exactly what her grandma said to do. We sat down and we ate the chicken. And of course her grandma's like, yes, this is it. You got it. Good job. And I'm of course going, yeah, it's good. It's good. And my wife's like, it's not the same though. It is still not the same. Now, here's my point of that is my wife, even to this day, so we have been married now, it'll be 30 years this year in December. We will have been married 30 years. So this is going back almost 30 years ago, and she still tries to make her grandma's chicken. And it is really good, like for real now. Like that first time, but for real now, it's really good. But honestly, it still does not taste like her grandma did it. Now, here's the point of that. Now, I jokingly would say to my wife sometimes, maybe it is because her grandma smoked for, I think, 60 or 70 years. I mean, since she was a teenager and she lived till pretty much 90. And so she smoked for a long, long time. And so I would joke with my wife and say, I don't know what the deal is because you're following her recipe. You're doing it everything exactly the way that she's doing it. Maybe it's the nicotine that was on her fingers from smoking that would get into the chicken that added some extra flavor. I don't know. Like, and I still to this day don't know why, because my wife is a phenomenal cook, but it just doesn't quite taste the same as what her grandma's. Now, here's the point. What I have learned as I have observed and watched agents prospect, the challenge that we have, and specifically I'm talking to myself now as a trainer, as I listen to people prospect, is what I have learned is this. What works for grandma, her grandma in making the chicken may not work exactly the same for you. Now, meaning we want to use the same base, the same words, the script. We may use the same script or the same recipe, but just some of the way that we do it. And I'll give you another quick example about what that looks like for me. My wife had asked me the one day to make a, I am not a cook. I don't even know what it's called. Basically, you put whipped cream in with fruit, like a fruit salad, I guess is probably what it's called. That should tells you how good of a cook I am. But so my wife said, okay, you're gonna take that and you need to fold it. Well, you guys that know how to cook, like I don't know what fold it means. I just sat and stirred it up. Well, what happens to whipping cream, which I had no idea, is you sit and stir it and stir it and stir it. It pretty much then just turns into water. So I made the worst summer or fruit salad probably ever made in the world. But here's the point. How you go about putting those ingredients together, how you go about putting the words together and how you use them, meaning this tone, the 38%, is what is going to make the difference of you not sounding like you're using a script. Now, here's the thing though. You just have to recognize that to begin with, you might sound like you're reading a script. That's okay. That's where we start. It's no different than I sat down with my son doing homework the other night and he had to write a story. And he wrote a story that was like a paragraph long. He hits enter, it gives him a grade. But the good thing is he can go and redo it after he gets the grade to improve his grade so that he can learn how to do a better job with it. Well, that same thing applies with us. And here's what that looks like for us. What we need to be doing, and this is why I'm saying tomorrow I'm going to do this virtual call around. You need either someone listening to you make your calls, or you need to be recording yourself making your calls. And then after your prospecting session is over, go back and listen to yourself. Now, here's the thing that I would recommend, and I'll explain what I mean by this. You need to be recording yourself when you are on the top of your game as well, not just when it's not working. So make sure you're recording yourself making phone calls when it's working really well, so that you have something to go back and listen to say, okay, how was I saying that word? Now, let me give you an example. I was talking with an agent the other day, and he was on the phone, and what he was doing, we were specifically talking about creating value in a phone call. And what I said to him is, you got to create some type of value for this person. And what you need to do then is, as what he was saying to them was that he searches and comes across some good deals. And I said, that's great, but you got to make sure you say it like it's real, not like you're making it up. Because see, if you just say this, hey, I come across some really good deals, they're going to go, okay. But if you say it this way, hey, I come across some really good deals from time to time before they even hit the market, like that's a little bit different message than, well, I come across some really good deals and I could keep an eye out for you. So just recognize the tone that we use is so important of how we are communicating. And not just for a second of your script, it's for a lot of it. If you stop and look at some of these actors and actresses that are getting paid $20 million for a movie to read a script, it's not, hey, I'll go read the script for $20 million. Here's the problem. I probably am not going to be able to put the body language that they do and the tone into it. See, it's the body language and the tone that they put into those movies that draw us in. When you're prospecting, it's the same thing. It's your tone and your body language. Body language, I think, is even more important when you're over the phone. Meaning, sometimes we think, well, it doesn't matter what your body language is. No, what your body language is how the tone's going to come through. So you got to make sure you're doing that body language. All right, so let me actually give you one more example of this. Most of you know I love baseball. This is killing me right now this time of year to not be watching baseball. It's so bad that last night at 9 o'clock, I went onto the MLB channel and I was watching game 1 of the 1995 World Series against the Atlanta Braves and the Cleveland Indians with Orel Hershiser pitching against Greg Maddux. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Now, the good news is I didn't remember what was happening or who won the game, other than I know the Braves probably won the series because they were just awesome in the 90s. But here's the thing. Here's what I love about baseball. So my son, I have an 11-year-old son that plays on a competitive team that we are not getting to practice right now as a team. So the coach has said, okay, you guys need to go practice on your own. See, I would say the same thing is going on with us right now. We aren't able to gather into a group and do some of this stuff. So as a result, you're going to have to do some of this on your own. But he said, the coach said, you guys need to go do this on your own. So my son and I have been working really hard. We go over to the park pretty much every day, and I'm either throwing pitches to him, he's pitching to me, we're doing some ground balls, we're doing fly balls, whatever, but we're practicing. Now, I've noticed, though, as doing this, because of putting that one-on-one attention with my son, his swing is getting better and better and better. Well, the other day I said to him, hey, your swing looks so good right now. We need to video your swing. Now, I'm going to actually relate our prospecting and this words, tone, and body language to the swing. Because here's what I have noticed. I have spent a number of years studying and learning about the proper swing mechanics, because part of what I love about my job, of what I do, is I love coaching and training. And so that same thing goes with baseball. And so I have 3 sons, and all 3 of them, I have either been the coach or an assistant coach for every one of them through pretty much their whole baseball career, at least till high school. Now, here's what I've noticed, though, in my study of this. Every single major league player, the fundamentals of their swing are the same. Meaning, once their foot lands, so that pitch is coming, once that pitch has left the pitcher's hand and their front foot lands, every single batter has essentially the same swing. Now, here's the difference, though. They all have their own style. Meaning, prior to that, some of them have their hands high, some have their hands low, some have their feet close together, some are far apart. Like, that's the style piece of this. And here's what I've learned. In terms of you prospecting, it's the same way. The same things apply, meaning the fundamentals of prospecting are the same. Meaning, when we're doing an upswing or a downswing, the way that we're saying some of the things, and making sure that when you are empathizing with somebody, that you really are showing empathy, that when you tell them, hey, that's exciting, that you're not just saying, oh, that's great. Instead, do it the way you would do it if you were with someone. Hey, that's exciting. That's great. So where did you move from? See, you got to ask it very inquisitively. And if you will work on that, I'm telling you, you're going to see much better results in your prospecting that you have. So we're over at the park the other day with my son, and I tell him, hey, your swing looks really good. We need to video your swing right now so that we have it on file, so that later on, if you start to struggle, we can go back to this and look at it and say, okay, what were you doing then that worked that you're not doing now? See, too many times in the past, all I would do is with my sons, I would go video them when the swing wasn't working. Well, that was fine, and it is helpful. Like, I'm not saying that's not helpful, but what if you had a recording of yourself on making some really, really good calls, so that you could, when you felt like you're in a slump or maybe something's not working, you can record yourself that day, go back to the time when you were really killing it on your phone calls and listen to what was the difference. Yeah, was I emphasizing a word a little bit differently or not a little differently? Whatever it is, but something like that. So here's my challenge for you guys today is, as I said, I'm going to be sending out a link for a virtual call around tomorrow. So 9 o'clock California, 10 o'clock Utah time. We'll get on, we'll talk for just a few minutes. I'm going to then put you guys into breakout rooms with 3 or 4. So there's a total of 3 or 4 agents, probably 4 agents per breakout room, that you guys can sit and make calls with each other, that you can listen to some other people making calls, but then also you can have them listen to you and give you some feedback. In those breakout rooms, you can raise your hand that would call me, or if I can get a few of the other managers on there as well, one of us to jump in and listen and hear what you're saying. So if you hear somebody on a call that you feel like they're struggling, you can hit that, raise your hand, and will call us to your breakout room. So here's my challenge for you though. Make some calls today and really work on some of this stuff and really record yourself, whether you're killing it on the phone right now or you're not, but make sure you get a recording of yourself either way. And then if you want, if you're too shy to get into a breakout room tomorrow, I will be happy to evaluate anybody's call. And look, I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm the ideal, that I'm going to be the very best person to do it. But you know what? I have listened to a lot of agents. I've spent the last 15 years training agents. So I'm going to be able to at least tell you, hey, this piece sounds like this or that. But send me a recording of your call. I'll be happy to analyze it, see what I can do to help you get better at it. And, you know, if we do this together, we're going to see a huge increase in our business. Like right now is such a good time to be calling, guys. Even if people are saying they want to wait, like I feel like we're going to start seeing some easing and it's going to start to take off. Get yourself set up, get ahead of the curve right now so that you can make sure that we really continue to make the money and do well. All right. Well, hey, thank you for being with me today. I appreciate your time. And look, I promise you, if you'll spend some time on this and really work on your tone and your body language, you're going to see huge increases in what you are doing. All right. Hey, thanks for being with me. Let's go ahead and we're going to do some closing affirmations now. Wrap this thing up. Have an awesome day. Get out there and make some appointments. Just set one appointment every day, minimum. One appointment every single day. Good things are going to happen.